Beane. I'd like to talk today about Quicklisp. Quicklisp has been out for about a year, and I'd like to talk about some of the technical aspects of the implementation of Quicklisp, both the client, the installer, the client, and the back end, how it works behind the scenes, and about some of the non-technical social things that I've seen as a result of working on Quicklisp and having it available to the world. Just as a show of hands, could I see how many have tried Quicklisp here? Excellent. I'm not going to demonstrate the installation or the use of Quicklisp for this talk. If you'd like to try Quicklisp, if you haven't tried it yet and you'd like to see it, you can get it from www.quicklisp.org, and that's the way to. If you'd like to see it, there are links there to try it. A little bit about me. Start off, I've been using Common Lisp for almost 10 years now. I tend to think of myself as being part of a sort of more recent generation of Common Lisp users. I started in the last decade rather than the last in the 80s or 90s. And I kind of cut my teeth with Emacs, SVCL, things like that. Eddie's libraries, things like that have been where I started. So that's kind of where I'm coming from with Common Lisp. And Quicklisp does kind of reflect that. So. All right. Let's see. Okay. What I've found is that there are a lot of Common Lisp libraries. People use Common Lisp for real practical work. And have written and shared solutions to the problems that they encounter. There's a lot of practical things to do, whether it's using XML or making web requests or encryption. A lot of practical everyday tasks are available as libraries from Common Lisp. These things don't have to be reinvented all the time from scratch. But reusing that work has historically been a challenge. And one of the goals of Quicklisp is to reduce the challenges involved there. And I'd like to kind of put Quicklisp in the context in which it was developed. It came out about a year ago, but before that there were a couple different solutions that people used to try and get the libraries that they needed. I did a survey last year before releasing Quicklisp and asked people, what do you use to get libraries, to get a supportive environment for Common Lisp development? And one of the interesting things I saw was that the majority of people who responded to my survey said they didn't use anything. They didn't use CL build, they didn't use ASDF install. They did everything manually, and that was kind of a surprise to me. I had kind of used ASDF install a little bit, but I thought most people probably used it. Most people probably used CL build, even though I myself did it manually. I would just find a link, download it, check for dependencies, and sort of go through that cycle, chasing down things to install. And most people did that. There's a lot of problems with that. Finding things is a pain, as has been brought up. Making sure that things work together is a pain. And so it's not a picnic. It's definitely not an ideal situation to do things like that by hand. It's kind of like, I view it as sort of building a supportive environment. Things that you've got, not just for a specific project, but for development in general, to have comfortable tools close at hand, things you're familiar with, things that solve problems that you encounter over and over again. You don't always want to have to rebuild the world from scratch. You'd like to be able to reuse the work there. And getting a comfort level is really important. ASDF install aims to simplify that process by creating an index of libraries that were available for download. Basically acting as a redirection service where you'd like to install library ABC, you go to a central location, click a button, and get the link to download that project. And in the process of loading that library, you may find that you need libraries XYZ, JKL, and it will proceed and recursively go through and fetch those types of things for you. But that was not without problems as well. How many people have used ASDF install prior to? Okay. without problems. After people used Quicklisp, I heard this a lot. I hated ASDF. Now, it's really a result of some confusion between what is ASDF and what is ASDF install. And I think the name is kind of a problem in and of itself. The fact that people couldn't distinguish between their build system, ASDF, which I think is does a fine job at what it does, and a library management system, ASDF install. It was just sort of lumped together in their minds as ASDF is not very good, so I don't like this, and that sort of thing. Another problem is the risk of incoherence, getting libraries where library A was meant to work together with library B, but due to continued development of one or the other, they're no longer in sync. They don't work together, an API has changed. Now, a lot of times the windows for that problem arising are fairly small. People like to make projects that work together. People like to respond to bug reports, in my experience. But that doesn't help you if you want to work on a project on a Monday morning, and you're in this window where A has been updated and B doesn't work, and you really need to get B working. It can be a real hassle. Availability was also an issue, where because of how ASDF install worked, you would be in a situation where you're consulting with Clicky.net to get a list of libraries to download. But Clicky.net doesn't host the software. It's hosted on, if you have to get 20 libraries, it may be hosted on 20 different servers all over the net. And it was not an uncommon occurrence to have one of the libraries be unavailable. Someone's server is down, there's some maintenance, there's a network issue, and suddenly your chain of 20 dependencies is broken in the middle. You can't get the work done that you want to get done. This is not so much an issue if you built up your collection of libraries that you always use, you already have them installed. It may have taken you 4 months to get everything you needed, and now you have it all. You're very comfortable. But if you're trying to get set up on a new system, or have a colleague get set up, or have a reproducible setup, these kinds of issues can arise. This happened, I think, 3 years in a row, where the domain name became unavailable due to an unpaid bill. A couple times I paid the bill, someone else has paid the bill. It's since been resolved, but these were the issues that people faced when using the old solution. So the other solution was CL build. That had some of the same issues as ASDF install in terms of coherence. It had a different philosophy in terms of how it worked. Rather than using a shared index, the Clicky.net index, to find software, there was actually someone would compile a static index as part of the project. That was sort of the basis of checking out projects from source control, getting a large collection of common Lisp libraries to use. And so that eliminated some of the issues of having things that didn't work in terms of fetching them from the web. But you could still have someone's version control unavailable. You could still have the coherence issue where Project A's version control is updated, but Project B hasn't. And it had the additional issue, aside from the issues it did very well at. For example, it was very good at helping people provide patches to authors of these projects. You're checking it out of version control, Darks or Git or wherever. It's fairly easy to become a participant in that ecosystem and write patches, get the history, see a lot of extra info, which is very useful and a noble goal. However, you do deal with some of the same issues as ASDF install. And it was written, I think, as Luke mentioned, as a shell script, primarily. So it worked great if you were using Unix, not so great if you weren't on a Unix system. So I'm not trying to pick on those projects as somehow bad solutions to the problem at hand. They were actually, they were very good efforts, and they provide a lot of insight about what some of the problems in the domain are. So that set up the context in which I started working on Quicklisp. I wanted something that was easy to install, in the sense sense that it didn't require specialized instructions if you were on a Unix system versus a Windows system, if you were on CLisp versus LispWorks versus SBCL. I wanted that experience to be consistent so that it wasn't an issue of getting I'm sure you might have had the experience of trying to show a coworker or a colleague or a friend about how to use a common Lisp if they were interested. And then say, oh, well, use Windows. Well, normally I would recommend ASDF install, but maybe you should start by getting Sigwin, and then maybe you'll need to get PGP, and because it will do these checks and things like that. Not a great first step for someone trying to learn something just very simple about Lisp. There's a roadblock there, a hurdle to get over. Some of the failure modes for the network and for availability made me want it to be always available, very reliable. I didn't want it to be distributed in the sense that it was scattered across 100 servers all over the world. It is actually, but they're Amazon servers. They're very reliable. I wanted to work everywhere, meaning on a Mac, Linux, Windows, any operating system that runs Common Lisp. I wanted to have Quicklisp available. And I wanted to keep things coherent. I wanted to make sure that if you got a project from Quicklisp, there had been some level of testing that projects that were meant to work together actually did work together. And so that's what that was my starting frame point of the features that I wanted to support. And that sort of drove some of the ways that things were implemented subsequently. The easy to install part, how that was achieved is a little boring, so I'll just go over it very quickly. The bootstrap process of Quicklisp involves downloading a single file, loading it. If you've tried Quicklisp, you've seen this process. You download a single file, load it into your Common Lisp implementation, and you're good to go. That's, there's a couple install steps, but aside from that, it's very easy to install. I just did that by cramming everything into a big file. I didn't want the file has a HTTP client implemented, a tar, something that opens the tar file. From there, it can bootstrap into the entire rest of the Quicklisp system. Downloads the initial stage, unpacks it, loads it through ASDF, downloads ASDF if needed, and that's how the installation was achieved. Working everywhere has a slight wrinkle. One of the almost universal techniques I've seen for writing portable or ported Common Lisp code for system-dependent functionality, things like exotic things like deleting a directory or getting an environment variable, other things of that nature, opening a network socket. These are usually done with the sharp plus and sharp minus conditional syntax, where you would write a single function. And then if you wanted to support 6 implementations of Common Lisp, you would have a sequence of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 sharp pluses with the names of the implementation, followed by the code that implements the functionality you wanted. I took a slightly different tack, and I don't know if it was because I haven't seen this before, and I don't know because it was being clever or stupid, but the implementations are modeled as classes. So for example, LispWorks, there's a class that represents LispWorks. There's a class that represents SBCL. And these implementation-specific features are written as methods, and they accept the implementation as a parameter to the method, or to the generic function, rather. And methods and the class dispatch system are used to choose the right implementation. And normally that would cause an issue with the package system. You wouldn't want to reference, say, the SBX getenv in LispWorks, and you wouldn't want to use the SB networking API in CLisp. But I got around that by creating the packages in advance and conditionally importing these symbols and re-exporting them, so that I had a set of symbols that I knew would be available, but they may not be defined in the Lisp in which the system is running. I like to use class in that instance because it made it somewhat simpler to support new Lisps without extending the code. If you've got the sharp plus, a sharp minus construct. You can extend that after the fact if you use fmac unbound and things like that. But with a method, you define a class, you write a method, and you have that feature supported. I could picture someone with a common Lisp implementation that's not currently supported, adding support by sending me a file with a class definition and say a dozen or so methods, and that would be all it would take to support their implementation. Pioneer, for example, that would be a way that someone could add that after the fact without coordinating with me. And until I would incorporate it directly into Quicklisp, it would work fine, and it would achieve that through methods. The always available part, as I mentioned, files are hosted on Amazon. That has implications on how smart the server side can be. Amazon serves plain files. I wanted to take advantage of the reliability of a plain file system, and so that's what that's what I'm using for making it always available. Now, Amazon is not flawless, but I think if there's a large-scale Amazon problem, Quicklisp is probably not going to be the first thing that people think about. Much of the internet will have melted down by then. Amazon also has a very affordable content distribution network. If you're in Europe and you fetch Quicklisp, you're getting it from a European server in Paris or Germany. If you're in Japan, it's being fetched from Tokyo, or if you're in the United States, there are a network of cache servers. And it's not only cheap, but it makes things very fast. I had a user who was in, I believe, Indonesia, who kept getting timeouts when trying to fetch the packages. But once I switched to this caching system, it moved the resources close enough to him that he was able to download and install everything he needed. And Amazon is extremely cheap. I would definitely recommend it for anyone who has a similar kind of problem of hosting files that are globally available. All right, the big piece is keeping things coherent. And this isn't something I've written or talked about before. It's not rocket science, but it is a little involved. I don't think this is necessarily the only way it could be done, but this is sort of the first take on the problem for me. The general idea is for everything in Quicklisp, there's about 700 projects. Get everything and build it. Build it from beginning to end. That's a high-level view. In practical terms, that means getting everything from their version control. Projects that do formal releases can be fetched through by getting the tarball. Basically obtaining everything that I want to get into one single location. The advantage of having them through one pass is then I can do incremental updates. If a project is maintained through Git, for example, instead of doing a full checkout every time that I want to test things, I can just do an update and see if anything's new. Or if I fetched a file through HTTP, I can just check, they do a conditional get and say, has this file been modified since the last time I checked? Okay, fetch it if so, otherwise use the existing file. From there, I produce kind of a slightly changed version. Usually what happens there is rather than zipping up a project as is, like the full darks repo or Git tree things, I'll do an export step, like a Git archive, things like that. Produce a set of tarballs. These are the basis for starting a tree. The tree contains every single project, works through the system files in there. There's more than 1,000. There's more than one system per project in some cases. And that requires a little manual intervention on my part. A lot of library authors, I guess you could consider in the bad old days, did some manual steps to keep coherence. For example, there are, I think, 4 or 5 copies of Alexandria bundled with projects that are lumped in if you were to download the tarball. There's the project code, and then they include Alexandria. And some include CFFI, and some include everything that they depend on. And that's sort of a mechanism for improving the is they know that these are good working versions of the software. I'm going to ship the user everything that they're going to need, and I'll be the sole provider. There'll be a dozen little distributors lumping together all the functionality they think you're going to need for their project. And that makes sense in a vacuum. I think my hope is that people will do that less and less with Quicklisp available, and they'll take advantage of the testing and coherence of Quicklisp to say, I'm going to trust that if there are incompatible updates, that I don't need to be the one to resolve those myself. I don't need to provide libraries myself. The big risk there in providing libraries is divergence, that somebody bundles a copy of Alexandria today, and then next year Alexandria has changed, but the software is never updated and things get out of sync. Having a lot of divergent versions floating around is not, I don't think that's a net win. And I think in the presence of Quicklisp, that's something that can be avoided. Each system is built. Oh, I should mention that these duplicate systems cause a problem and require the manual intervention. They do have to keep track of a blacklist of projects that do this. It's not just people who include duplicate third-party libraries. Another issue is people giving a system file the same name as something else. If I want to use the rest of the project and just ignore that one piece, I have to inform my system. Don't use this copy, use this copy. This is the right copy to use. But after kind of resolving those sort of issues, the next step is to build everything. Okay. I compute the dependencies at build time. One of the ways that ASDF install worked was computing them at. Let me step back. I compute them at build time and compile a static list of dependencies in the indexes of Quicklisp. So if you were downloading something from Quicklisp, it can tell you if you want Punch and Toot, you're going to need these 7 other libraries. It can tell you that up front and download them up front. ASDF install would defer that to, you've got a library missing. Okay, let's start this process again recursively. To compile the dependencies, I've got an instrumented version of ASDF. If you've looked at a system file, an ASDF system file, it has a list of dependencies in it. And I initially thought I could just use that list directly, but it doesn't work. System files often have a lot of non-system definition code. I shouldn't say often, but there are cases where there's non-system definition code in the system file. Stuff that loads other projects that are used in supporting the build system. So if I relied solely on the depends on list in the system file, I would miss a lot of dependencies. There's things like throttling and other things that are loaded in advance that you have to intercept basically to find them. Now, this doesn't always run to completion successfully for every project. In fact, there's a lot of projects that don't work and have never worked. The interesting part to me is when there's a project that used to work and between runs stops working. I try to do a build every day. At the end of the build, it produces a report that says, since the last dist release, you have projects X, Y, and Z have been updated. Projects A, B, and C have been added. And oh, by the way, project K is gone. It doesn't work anymore. What I do in that case is when building, everything is output to a set of logs. Each project has its own set of build logs. It logs a full compilation output. If there's any errors, it dumps a backtrace. So one of the nice things I can do is very quickly jump to the failure output of a project and say, this is because of the most common reason used to be components missing. It needs a library. It's not available. That doesn't happen as often now that there's 700 projects in Quicklisp, but it used to be that used to be the way to get started. Was I'd start with one project and start kind of pulling on the thread and seeing what came along with it. Now there's a great mass of projects that happens less and less frequently. Another issue that might cause a build failure is a missing foreign library. If there's a project that requires libfoo.so, you might get a report that says that it couldn't load that, and that to proceed with that build, I need to find that file and install it. I used Debian as the basis for this, and the apt file utility makes that almost painless to find everything I need to bring things up to speed for testing in terms of getting libraries. The other issue might be just that there's a bug. There's some kind of issue where there's a straight parenthesis, or there's some other issue where a function call doesn't work properly, or there's a format that doesn't have enough arguments, or that has too many. And what I try to do in that case is find the backtrace, find the error log output, find the author, and contact them and say, you know, I've got this project that's in Quicklisp, used to build, now it doesn't. Here's what it looks like. And I do that. You know, since I started Quicklisp, I've done that dozens and dozens of times. Every time with positive results, people are generally very grateful for bug reports, feedback, and very pumped about fixing it. And actually, is Alessio here? I sent you a bug report last night about Duplex. So if you fix it, it will be in the next release. Now, when things are successful, the result is published as what I call a disk, a set of software, a set of archives, and some metadata about the relationships between project names, project systems, and what depends on what. That's done. That's published to Amazon, and what I do in that case is only upload projects that have been genuinely updated. For example, I will check things out and make snapshots every day, but I only upload basically a delta from the last one. So, for example, if version 1 of a project was in last month's release and it hasn't been updated at all, everything in the new version of the disks refers to that original file, and I keep those files around long term. Those are I'd like to treat them as indelible and as permanent locations for these prior versions. The goal there being that if you, say, developed a library or an application at a certain point in time, relying on a certain set of libraries, they'll always be available in the Quicklisp archive. You'll always be able to get back to a working configuration, provided other pieces of the environment are same, like SBCL's internals haven't changed in a way that makes your application not work, although that rarely happens. Now, one of the questions people ask me about this setup is it too much work? It sounds like this is a great system. I love Quicklisp, but I'm worried that you're going to get burned out, or that you'll stop doing it. You stop doing it because it's too much work. It hasn't been to this point, and one of the important reasons is, and I think this is a more general lesson, is that there's a lot of supportive tools that I've developed at least on the back-end side, to make it extremely easy to make these updates, to do a daily check, to find new software, to incorporate new software. For example, adding a new project is a one-line command. I give it the location, it guesses the name, it guesses whether it's Git, SVN. It's not hard to guess. I mean, obviously it's very easy to guess. But I've automated that to the point where it's a single file, a single command to add a new project. It will automatically build and report, this worked, this didn't work, here's what you're missing. So that's a supportive tool. Doing a rebuild is one command. It does all the reports automatically. Publishing is a couple commands. It really is a fairly simple system that takes a few hours per week to keep it up to date on the archive side. So I'm not concerned about keeping that up indefinitely. Anything can happen, but I think the system is, as the archive system, is such low maintenance at this point. I'm not concerned about personal scalability. Now, I was concerned initially about bill from Amazon. I thought, if this becomes popular, maybe I'll love to afford it. Is this going to be an extremely expensive hobby that I can't really justify? But so far, after doing it for a year, the average bill is about $1 a month for Amazon. I don't consider that because there's a very low traffic. I see about 30 installs per day on average, and thousands of downloads per day. But Amazon's So on the technical side, there are a lot of things to do. It's not a perfect system by any means. I'd like to make it so the mechanics are there so that anyone can publish libraries, publish an index, and point the Quicklisp software at their libraries, at their index, and they are in effect a peer of me after that point. There's no special privilege that I have baked in, URLs that you can only use my URLs. The only downside is I haven't documented how to do it. The software is not available. It's really I say it's a supportive environment. It's also very ad hoc and written on the fly, not documented, that kind of thing. I'd like to be able to make it available to everyone and have everyone have this capability of providing their own custom software. I got an email this morning from Doug Crozier, who's the guy behind Pioneer, and he said, I really want to have my own repository of Pioneer software. How can I do it? I'd love to be able to have that documented, easy to do. At the moment, it's not. That's something that's on my to-do list. Documentation is a big issue. As Nick mentioned, there's many libraries with wonderful names. Being able to find out what they do and what you might conceivably use one for is a challenge. Quicklisp fits very well if you know what you want. You know the name of the project you want, and you can get it right away. Not so well if you know the task you want to do, and you need to map that to a project. Looking at a list of 700 projects with no description is not very enlightening. I'd like to improve that situation. I also currently only test on SBCL, and I don't want to, that's not a design goal. I don't want to be exclusive to SBCL. I like software that works on all implementations. I just need to add that in. I need to, or that's also not something that requires my close coordination. I'd love to see that done. Someone else can do that for me. I don't mind. And another thing that I'd like to have is the carryover from CL build. It's a good thing to be able to contribute to the ecosystem of Commons software. It's good to hack on things, see the history, send patches, that sort of thing. Sometimes that's what you don't want to do. You want to have the software provided for you. You want it as a black box that you just use. Sometimes you want the opposite. I'd like to make it easy to have hackability of these projects so that you have visibility of where they came from, how to get the source, how to send patches, that sort of thing. I'd like to make these. And this is not an exhaustive list by any means, but those are a few things I'd like to do. So now I'd like to talk a little bit about the impact on a completely non-technical issue of how I think Quicklisp has changed behaviors in the past year since it's been available. Let's see. I really believe this is true. At the time I was working on Quicklisp, I thought it would be one of many options. I thought some people would use Quicklisp. I thought some people would continue to use ASDF install. I thought that maybe some other projects would come to fruition that were in progress. At the moment, it seems like Quicklisp is I think the majority of people who want to do this kind of thing and who find this acceptable are using Quicklisp rather than alternatives right now. And I think it's because things are easier. And the impact of that is felt in a couple different areas. I've gotten an email like this or direct communication several times. I've had people say, I looked at Common Lisp 4 years ago, and it was just such a headache. I didn't want to try it. I couldn't get started. But now I tried Quicklisp, and everything is much easier. And so now I'm starting to have Common Lisp, and I love to hear stuff like that. I've also heard things like, oh, well, I used it back in 2002, and really felt like I was roughing it, so I gave it up. I saw Quicklisp in the news, and so I thought I'd check it out. Now I'm back with Common Lisp. I love to hear stuff like that. And I think it's because of the ease of use and the fact that it works on Windows, it works on Unix, it works on every Common Lisp that people are bringing to it. So I think that's a positive trend. And I think the availability of a system like this helps authors. I've gotten, just this morning, I got an email from someone who said, I have this private set of libraries that I've been using. I didn't want to go to the hassle of setting up a web website for them and doing links and things like that. But you know, I've used Quicklisp now, and I see how library management can be. I want to publish my libraries. Here they are. I haven't even looked at them yet. It's a collection of parallel computing utilities. I've had that story more than once. I've had people say, you know, we had this in-house software, but you know, this is just so easy. I know people will start to use it if I put it out there. I write documentation, and they can just install it with one command. I know that this will have a greater impact than it would have before Quicklisp. So that's very gratifying, and I think it's healthy for the ecosystem of libraries to have more people have that attitude. I had one other thing that people have said that I don't quite understand, but is positive as well. People tell me, oh, I was using these libraries, but I would check them out all by myself. I would put them in my system, you know, my project's third-party directory, and I had all these patches that I applied personally. I mean, they're general use, they're all bug fixes, and it should go back upstream, but I never bothered. Now that Quicklisp is out, I'm going to send my patches back, and I'm not sure. I guess I can imagine some reasons why people might wait, but I've heard more than one person say exactly that. I'm going to start sharing my patches back because of Quicklisp, so I'm pleased with that. A lot of people like to talk about dependency hell, chasing things down. My sincere hope is that Quicklisp really improves the situation. One of the things I haven't adequately published or documented is the fact that you can go back to working versions. It's not that hard. It reminds me a little bit of having a tree with file systems that do snapshots, for example. They save the root of the tree from some point back in time so that you can go back to older files. It's a similar idea with Quicklisp. You can go back to older indexes of stuff. You can go back to things that worked for you, things that worked for your application. You don't have to worry about, oh, I'm moving to a new system. I can't replicate the environment that I want. It's too hard. It's such a pain. I'm hoping Quicklisp gives people more comfort, more capability to stop worrying about that kind of, stop worrying about their software breaking up from it. On the social side, there's also a lot of things to do, and this has come up a few times today. I'd like to, or this isn't something I strictly have to do. This is something that's on my mind a lot, though. I'd like to facilitate sharing information about what projects are good, what projects are in use, what they're used for, people's reactions and experience. I'd like to make that publicly available. I'd like that to be easy to find. I'd like people to be able to say, oh, well, if you're using XML, these are my top 3 libraries. But on the other hand, when I tried it on this implementation, it didn't work, so maybe you want to be thinking about that. I want people to be able to provide that information, and for newcomers to get a sense of context. I mean, I feel like I know the libraries I'm comfortable with and the libraries that I would recommend. There isn't an easy way to find out, as a newcomer, what those might be. I'd like to have everyone be able to share that. If someone has a problem, I'd like to make it easy for them to report bugs. Right now, I use Google. Even though I've gathered all this information, I don't have everything. I don't have all the authors stored or all the mailing lists stored. I'd like to make it easy for someone who wants to do a reasonable thing. We run into a bug, I want to report it. How do I do that for project ABC? I want to make that easy. I want to make it easy for myself, and I want to make it easy for users. Quicklisp itself is simple, but not so simple it doesn't need any documentation. I'd like to finish that. And there's much, much more to be done to make the experience better. I've sometimes heard the sentiment that, well, if anything, if your idea was so great, someone would have done it already. No, people have to do the work. Someone has to step up and make it happen. I always think there's things that can be improved and that should be improved. And although I like Quicklisp, I can understand many things can be improved. I hope to do that as part of improving the Quicklisp experience on a social level. This is a kind of a random slide. I get web statistics for user agents of the clients downloading Quicklisp archives. What you can see there is right now the majority, 65%, are using SBCL. And I think we've got the second in line is Clojure, CLisp, and then 7% is other. That's ListWorks, Allegro, CMUCL, ECL, ABCL, that sort of thing, all kind of lumped together. But that kind of gives me an idea about my audience for Quicklisp. I certainly have no bias against commercial lists, but it seems like at the moment they're not used nearly as much. I think that's because commercial lists provide their own supporting environment. Free lists have not been nearly as good, but I'd love to see some of these supporting ideas for creating and updating libraries work for everyone. I don't want to limit myself to the list that I use or the list that most of my friends use. I want it to work everywhere that list goes. That has been my philosophy. Talk is cheap, write code, and just do it. So, and some shout outs. This would be pointless if there weren't hundreds and hundreds of libraries to use. I think Eddie has certainly been a pioneer in my generation of Lisp users in showing people how to write and publish and document high quality, very useful libraries. And I'm very glad that it's not just him. I'm glad that other people are doing the same thing. And it seems like more and more every day. It really makes Quicklisp valuable and makes it enjoyable to work with Lisp. Users have been very gracious and kind with feedback. People have also made monetary donations. I use that to get more hardware to build Lisp faster, to save my work, things like that. And thanks to those who have organized ECLM. It's been a real pleasure to be here and to speak. Any questions? Nick? The question is, if there's a collection of, say, 50 libraries, and you're delivering an application that needs only a subset of them, say only 3 of them, is there a way to do that? At the moment, no. That is kind of interesting. That's a feature that I thought no one would use Quicklisp without. That hasn't been a barrier so far. But it is on my mind. Application delivery is important. The idea that I'd like to pursue as time permits is that you can specify those kind of things. It will produce something that can be loaded completely without Quicklisp. Say just enough metadata and say ASDF or some kind of index, so that it's a much simpler system that can load your application and libraries completely separately in Eclipse. The first question is do I have a license policy for libraries that I include in Quicklisp? The license policy for things I personally distribute is that I have to have license to distribute the source. I don't have a restriction that they have to be a certain class of licenses. I don't say GPL only or PSD only. I don't make modifications or derived works, but I do want to distribute them to users from my system, so I need that permission. Now, I would like to make it easy for people to discover, like speaking of delivery, I'd like to make it easy for people to discover. This is the 3 libraries I need. One's GPL, one's PSD, one's MIT. What do I have to comply with as a result of using these? Or maybe make different decisions based on that information. The ability to query that kind of information isn't there. But as far as the license policy goes, anything that's open source in a broad sense of the word. The second question was, I've talked to people privately and directly about security. Right now, you get Quicklisp, the bootstrap file, and the archives and the indexes are unencrypted and unsigned. That's another issue that I thought no one would ever use it if I didn't do that immediately. It hasn't been an issue. People haven't refused to use it. It's something I'd like to add. I'd like to make sure that the bootstrap system can be, say, fetched over SSL, and that the metadata is signed. I have a quick I'd like to see some kind of separate phase for delivery, but it's more geared for infrastructure type projects. That being said, it does have a few applications in there, like Stump WM is in there, I think, and yes, Climax, and the other Hemlock is in there. And those I would consider more applications than libraries. But in general, I don't view it as a great. I'm not sure what a great mechanism for application delivery would look like. I haven't thought about those in that terms. The question is, have I given thought to including regression tests so that libraries can maintain concurrency? I'd like to see something like that happen. A build test is a very superficial test. I've had libraries that build fine, and then of course semantically they were a mess. I'd like to do that. It seems like it will just take someone doing the work, whether that's me or someone else. I'd love to see something like that.
I have two questions. One for the documentation. I think it's a very important topic. It would be very high on my priority list. How do you want to implement it, or are you working on implementing this already? Is there more metadata?
Well, what I found is that one of the things I've started working on for documentation. Now, do you need documentation of Quicklisp itself or of the projects?
No, for the projects.
Well, what I found is that it's a real challenge because everyone uses a different documentation system, and sometimes they use exotic tools that they wrote themselves to build the documentation. But what I would like to do is kind of what I do with the libraries themselves. At a central location, extract the documentation from the project. If it's available within the project, good. If it has to be fetched from some other place, good. But then convert it to something that's my first cut is convert it to HTML and bundle it together. I found real value in even in doing that, because having it available offline, having it available on the train or on a plane or any place like that is incredibly valuable. And of course, people, if you have to go to someone's site to get documentation, you get back to the availability issue. If someone's site is down and you need documentation for the project, I don't want people to be out of luck in that situation. So it's a work in progress, but I agree with it's important. I really want people to be able to get the documentation very easily.
Next question is, you said that you want users to provide their own distributions. I'm coming from, or I'm using Gentoo a lot, and there's a system called overlays where you have this package system where you can replace parts of the portage tree, or not replace, but virtually replace with your own, or shadowing, yes, with your own versions. Do you intend to do something similar, or are these disks more separate from each other?
Well, the intent is to provide something similar. I haven't used that system directly, but the idea for a user-defined or a third-party dist is that either on a dist level, say for the whole dist, or for an individual project dist, you can assign a priority and say, for dist A, always prefer this dist package to dist B. Or for dist A project B, prefer that, but for everything else, prefer something else. This is sort of an